about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. What should I do? Disclaimer, not my story time. It's on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 11 months. Here's a little backstory. We both work at the same company and live very far from our parents. I try to go home once a month since my parents are only 2 hours away from me. His parents live in a different country. For that reason, I haven't met his parents. But he's met my parents and he's been completely respectful and really nice to them. So I never suspected that he could be abusive to his parents. So here's what happened. We flew over to his parents and they are very rich. His mom is an interior designer and their house is phenomenal. His dad owns a couple of businesses and together they are very wealthy. His parents went to pick us up at the airport and everything was fine until we got to their house. They decided to give me a tour of their ginormous mansion. That's when I noticed that my boyfriend was being kind of rude to them. Every time they would ask me a question, he would answer and be like, duh, she likes pizza. He even asked his mom to stop asking stupid questions. I stopped him in his tracks and in front of his parents I said, why are you being rude to your parents? The look on his parents' face was of shock. And that's when I realized that they had never disciplined him. But then it got worse. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said on Instagram. The look on his parents' face when I called him out for being rude to them was complete shock. After they gave me the tour of the house, we decided to sit down for dinner. They are so rich that they have their own chef. That's when the chef comes out and starts serving all the food. And as soon as my boyfriend sees what they served, he grabs his glass of water and bangs it against the table. He looks at both of his parents and says, what is wrong with you both? The color from their faces drain. That's when they said, I'm sorry, we didn't know he was gonna make this. The chef decided to make a really fancy meatloaf. Apparently he hates meatloaf. Then he said, well, tell him to make something else. His mother gets up and runs to the kitchen and asks the chef to make him a burger, because that's his favorite food. Which, by the way, I never even knew that. He always told me his favorite food was Indian. His mom comes back from the kitchen. Then he looks at me and says, you don't have to eat that if you don't want to. I told him that he was being a brat and that I'd be happy to eat the meatloaf. His parents look at me and smile. My boyfriend just gets up from the table and runs away. Can you believe I had to chase after him? Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. What should I do? Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on Instagram. That's when my stupid boyfriend runs away from the dinner table. So of course I have to chase him. And of course I'm angry at this point. I ask him why he's being so rude to his parents. Then he literally denies that he just did anything. His words were, you're reading too much into it. My parents are stupid anyway. I looked at him and I said, do you not see the mansion we're standing in? How did 2 stupid people manage to build this mansion, 4 businesses, and put you through school? He rolls his eyes at me and says, Jesus Christ, you sound like my parents. I told him that he was a privileged rat. You see, I come from a family where we don't have chefs and we don't have millions of dollars or a mansion. So I appreciate everything my parents did for me. I went back to the dining room and I told his parents it was nice to meet them, but that I could no longer be with their son. That's when his mom started begging me not to leave. It was hard, but I called an Uber and I went home. My boyfriend's been begging me to get back with him. He's trying really hard too. His parents are even offering to pay my student loans. I'm honestly confused now. What should I do?
Story time about why I will never go Black Friday shopping ever again. So a little background information. I was 13 and in 8th grade. And my best friends and I were super excited because we'd never been Black Friday shopping before. So we had a plan that all of us would spend the night at my house and my mom would drive us to the mall at 4 in the morning. So fast forward, it's 4 in the morning and my friends and I are ready to go to the mall and my mom came with us, but we didn't stay with her the whole time. So as we were walking to the first store, we realized that there were these 3 guys behind us that have kind of been following us around since we got into the mall. But we just think it's a coincidence because, you know, it's Black Friday, the mall is packed. There are obviously going to be people going the same exact way as us. So we go into the first store, we get what we want to get, and the men didn't follow us in there. But as we're making our way to the next store, we realized that they're following us again. It was like they waited outside the first store for us to come out. So then we decided that we were going to walk around one of the kiosks a few times to see if they were really following us. And of course they were, so we went into another store and they didn't follow us in that one either. So I go up to one of the workers and I asked if they could possibly like call security or something because there are these guys following us, and she said, yeah, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never go Black Friday shopping ever again. So like I said, my friends and I go into the one store and of course they don't follow us in there, so we ask an employee if they can call security. So whenever security got there, I told them that these guys had been following us around since we got into the mall. And then security's like, well, where's your mother? Acting like it was our fault that we could be kidnapped for not being with my mom. So after that, he's like, all right, just go find your mom, you know, I'll talk to them. So I call my mom and I'm like, hey, where are you? Of course, she's on the whole other side of the mall. So my friends and I are going to meet her on the other side of the mall. And we look back to see if the security guard was talking to them. And literally the security guard just walked out of the store and went the complete opposite way. Then we walk up to the security guard and we're like, you didn't even talk to him. And then he turns around, rolls his eyes, goes over and starts talking to these guys. And then we continue to the store that my mom was at whenever we decided to stop at Starbucks to get something to drink. So after 10 minutes of waiting in line, you know, we turn around and we see these guys standing at the end of the line just staring at us. So we get out of line and we decided to just go straight to the store that my mom was at. And when we got there, we told her what was going on. So she was like, okay, let me get these few things and then we can leave, like for part 3. Part 3 about why I will never ever go Black Friday shopping ever again. So like I said, we got out of line and we went straight to the store that my mom was at, and she was like, okay, just let me get these few things and then we can leave. So we start walking towards the exit, and then I'm like, Mom, they're still following us. So she turns around and she realizes they're literally standing 2 feet behind us. So we decided to go into one of the stores, and we asked one of the employees if they could also call the head of security. And whenever head of security got there, she literally tore them a new you-know-what. After that, my mom tries to go and point out the guys, and they're not standing there anymore. So they're like, well, what do you want us to do? And then my mom's like, well, you can walk us out to our car. So they walk us out to our car, and then they stand there while we're getting in. My mom starts the car and she starts backing up, and we literally run over something. And all of a sudden we hear like screaming and moaning, and the security guards look under the car, and literally one of the guys who was following us is literally laying under our cars with a knife. And as soon as that happened, there was literally a van parked right across from our car. The van drove away really fast, but the police ended up catching up to it, and they found like 8 girls in that van.
So my husband cheated on me, and I'm gonna tell you how I found out. I was sleeping, and normally when I wake up, I'm always like checking the cameras just to like joke around with my dog, and like I'll call him through the camera, whatever. I look at the camera, and this man is laying down on the couch with a woman on him. Like, this cannot be happening to me. Like, I'm literally in the next room and he's doing this while I'm sleeping. I get up from my bed and the door open, and I'm like, how can you do this to me? Like, I couldn't even talk. And the girl, I couldn't even see her face. I didn't even see her face because she walked out. And I'm like, I'm not even gonna blame her. I'm gonna blame him. I'm like going crazy on him. And he's like, it's not what it looks like. And I'm like, of course you're gonna say it's not what it looks like. Every cheater says that. And he's like, no, this is really, it's not what it looks like, blah, blah. And I'm like, I want you out of my house, like right now. I can't believe you like do this, like when I'm in the next room. And then as he's walking like out the door, I'm like, I fucking hate you, blah, blah, blah. I want a divorce. And that was like what set him off. And he like hit me in the neck like this. And I was like in shock. I was in disbelief because this is like the sweetest man ever. Like, he would never do that. And I'm like there, and he's like screaming at me. I'm like on the floor, like shocked, like, and he's like still screaming at me like, you don't talk to me like that, blah, blah, blah. And I wake up to my husband cooking me breakfast.
Am I the bad apple for teaching my nephew how to share? My sister-in-law and her husband always host Thanksgiving dinner. They have a 14-year-old son named Chase, while my wife and I have 2 kids, Betty 8 and Sarah 3. While she was cooking, my sister-in-law sent Chase to the corner store for some milk. When he came back, he had 2 bags of candy with him. Of course my kids wanted some and immediately asked for him to share. But Chase told them no. I, of course, intervened and told Chase, you shouldn't have brought candy into the house without expecting to share with your cousins. He told me no and just went up to his room to hide the candy. I told him to go get the candy and that I would just pass it out after dinner. My brother then intervened and told me to leave Chase alone, that he didn't have to share. He caused Sarah to have a temper tantrum, and everyone knows you don't bring candy around small children and expect them to not want some. You have to share with them or they just throw temper tantrums. I told Chase he was being selfish, and he just went up to his room and locked his door.